Welcome back and thanks for stopping in. My name is Daniel Troutman with thesmashcake.com and troutmanphotography.com. And today we're going to go ahead and answer 3 of the most frequently asked questions I get here at the Smash Cake. Now, if you guys have any questions, of course, feel free. The comment section down below, that is where that is supposed to go down. And when you go ahead and ask questions down there from time to time, I might just include them in a video like this. So feel free to utilize that, and let's get started with today's first question. What camera settings do you use for a Smash Cake session? That is a solid question, and that's why it's question number 1. And the answer there is it depends, but let's go ahead and throw out some specifics. What I like to never do is I never like to have my shutter speed go below 1/200th of a second, because little children, when they're smashing cakes, their little fists are flying and they're like little kung fu fighters, and they are smashing the crap out of that cake. And if you go below 1/200th of a second on your shutter speed, what happens is you get a motion blur on the hands. And sometimes you can use that for creative effect, but most of the time it just looks bad and the parents don't like it, and you're never going to sell that image. So if you've taken the entire session at, say, 1/60th of a second, and there's just a constant motion blur, you may not make a whole lot on that session. So my advice to you, keep that shutter speed at 1/200th of a second or greater. Now, when it comes to aperture, what I like to do is I like to shoot anywhere between 1.8 and f4.0. Right, that's kind of my sweet spots. If you don't have 1.8 on your lens, then go to like 2.8 or 5.6, but never ever take your aperture above 5.6, because then it becomes really impossible to get that background kind of nicely out of focus, and you're gonna have to do all that later on in Photoshop. And as I've said a million times on this channel, the more time you spend in Photoshop, the more money you lose on the project itself. So stay out of Photoshop, get it in camera whenever possible. And my way of doing that is to shoot between f2.8 and f5.6. Now that leads me to the ISO. What ISO do I use? Well, I plug in the shutter speed of 1/200th or greater, and I plug in the aperture that I'm going to use. And then I take my ISO, and I want that ISO to be as low as possible. My goal is to use ISO 100 or less, depending on your camera. And then, I plug in the shutter speed of 200 or greater. I plug in the aperture that I'd like to use. And then if it's underexposed, then I slowly increase my ISO step by step until the image in the back of my camera becomes properly exposed. And that's how I decide on my ISO. Now, never fear, I will, of course, do a complete video on my camera settings and when to choose what camera setting, but that is a video for another time. So today we're going to go ahead and just stop the answer right there for the sake of expediency, and we're going to move on to question number 2. So the next question is, how big of a cake do you use? Great question, because if you get the size wrong, one of 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, the kid will be dwarfed behind the cake if it's too large. And number 2, if it's too small, it won't be substantial enough and it'll just look wonky, right? It'll make your set look, I don't know, there'd be something wrong with it. Because let's face it, the cake is the star of the set. And if the proportions aren't correct, then the whole set, no matter how good of a job you've done on that set, it's just not going to look right. So my preferred size is 6 inches. And I prefer a 2 or 3 tiered cake, never going beyond that 3 tiered level, because again, you do not want to dwarf the child behind the cake. And that's kind of where I go. So 6 inches stacked 3 high is about where I like to be. The next question I get all the time, this one's a tough one. And the question is, what do you do if the child won't quit crying? Well, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, did you ask the parents about nap time? Nap time is hugely important, and if you are scheduling your photo shoot right on top of the kid's regularly scheduled nap time, then you've just set yourself up for failure, because that kid is supposed to be asleep. Now, if it is a case where the child is normally up at that time and they are cranky, then you need to find out if the child is sick, because if the child is sick or has a fever because maybe they're teething or whatever, you need to call time of death on that shoot, because there is no picture on the planet that is worth stressing out a child that doesn't feel well. All right, so find out if the child is sick, and if they aren't, then you can push forward. But if they are, call time of death on the shoot and let the child go home. Now, if they are not sick and you are not scheduled on top of when they are normally taking a nap, then you need to run through, all the parent things. Are you hungry? Are you messy? Are you wet? You need to run through all of those standard things. And if you find a problem there, of course, you need to fix it. After that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to give the child to its preferred parent. Now, at this stage of the game, they always have one parent that they prefer over the other, and just give the child to that parent and give them some quiet time to just kind of snuggle and recenter and be together. And then you can go ahead and try and push on after the child has had a chance to kind of reset. Now, if the child has reset, and they get on set and you are shooting a couple frames and they start to melt down again, the problem might be you. Now, this happens to me all the time. I'm a larger than average dude and I have a metal black box in front of my face. I can be very scary. I try not to be, but some children just don't respond well to me. And if that's the case, then I move on to a very extreme step, and that is to pull out a very long zoom lens. I pull out a 70 to 200 and I get as far away from the child as possible. Now, if you're working with an assistant, this is when your assistant has to do all the child wrangling, because obviously you're going to be 10 to 15 feet away. And if you're not working with an assistant, this is when you need to employ one of the parents to be the child wrangler for you. Now, if you don't have a zoom lens and you can't perform this little trick, oh my goodness, I've got one more tip for you that might just save it. And that is set the camera down and connect with the child. Bring out some blocks, read the kiddo a story, pull up their favorite song on your cell phone. Whatever you have to do to establish trust with that child, do it. Because that's all they're looking for. They're looking to trust you and they want to have fun. And if you're a fun person to be around, then they're going to perk right up and you're going to be able to get the shots that you're looking for. Now, if you tried all that and it's not working, sometimes all that kiddo needs from you is a hug, right? That's all they're looking for sometimes. So go ahead and ask the parents if it's okay if you scoop the child up, give them a hug, bounce them, do the daddy burpee, back patty, bouncy thing that we all know how to do, right? Do that thing. If you've ever had a child, you know what that thing is. You start bouncing with the knees, you pat with the back, maybe you sing a song, do whatever you have to do, but cuddle that child. And again, make sure you have the parents' permission before you give that a shot. And at the end of all of that, if it doesn't work, sometimes the only thing you can do is reschedule the shoot. I know that's not what you want to hear. Rescheduling the shoot sucks, but sometimes there's just no way around it. So go ahead and, have that talk with the parents. And if they're cool with it, then just, come back at a different date and give it another shot. Next up is, what size backdrop do you like to use? And this is a great one because, again, if you get the backdrop size wrong, you're going to have a ton of different problems. So, for example, if you were to go ahead and shoot on a small backdrop, say like a 5-footer, you're going to have to get nice and tight and close to that backdrop. And it's going to become really, really hard for you to get the background out of focus. And that, as we all know, is the holy grail of smash cake photography. Now, my sweet spot is a 7 to 10 foot backdrop. And the reason I kind of like that is because it is large, right? It is larger, and it gives you the opportunity to take all of the elements of the set and bring them forward away from the background, and then use a zoom lens to zoom in slightly. And what happens there is the compression of that zoom lens and that distance is going to make that background go completely soft. It's going to make the background look amazing. And it's going to help you if it's one of those vinyl backgrounds where you can't get the creases out of it with a steamer. Well, those creases will not be visible. So 7 to 10 feet is my preferred sweet spot. I love it. Give it a shot. Overbuild your sets too. And the reason that you should do that is because it gives you more opportunities on shooting from different angles. And when you can shoot from different angles, well, you get more pictures to sell to the parents later. So it's only going to help you in the sales room if you decide to go with a larger backdrop. All right, everybody. Well, if you enjoyed videos like this where I answer your questions, then perhaps you'll enjoy a live stream. Now, I'm trying to see if there's any interest for that. So if you guys are interested in a live Q&A with me where you get to talk to me, live and there's no chance for me to edit out my mistakes, then go ahead and put live stream please in the comment section below, and then tell me, what time zone would be best for you. And that way we can go ahead and plan when the live stream is going to happen, or whether or not anybody's even interested in the live stream. So comment down below, let me know if you're interested. And until next time, guys, I'm Daniel Troutman with thesmashcake.com. Thank you for watching today's video, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye-bye, guys.